distinction that I want you to be aware of as we go forward and listen to the message that he's here to deliver to us today. Allen West was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, in the same neighborhood where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once preached. He is the third of 4 generations of military servicemen in his family. He was commissioned through ROTC at the University of Tennessee.
Rocky Top. Go ball. Go Rocky Top.
See, I'm an American above all because being a Gator, I felt it was really important to get that in there. But as he was a second lieutenant, and that was on July 31st, 1982. He entered active duty service in the U.S. Army on November 1st, 1983 at Fort Sill to attend Field Artillery Officer Basic Course. He later attended airborne training at Fort Benning. West's first assignment was as an airborne infantry company fire support team leader and battalion training officer in the 325th Airborne Battalion combat team. And in 1987, he was promoted to captain and attended the Field Artillery Officer Advanced Course. He went on to do many great things and advance in his military career. I want to tell you a little bit about the awards that he received during that time, though. West awards and decorations include the Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Medal, 2 oak leaf clusters, Army Commendation Medal, 3 oak leaf clusters, 1 Valor Device, Army Achievement Medal, 1 oak leaf cluster, Valorious Unit Award, Air Assault Badge, and the Master Parachutist Badge. Lieutenant Colonel West proudly wears the Army Parachutist Badge, the Air Assault Badge, the Navy Marine Corps Parachutist Wings, the Italian Parachutist Insignia, and the German Proficiency Badge. This is one impressive individual. After his retirement from the Army in 2004, Allen taught high school for a year before returning to Afghanistan as a civilian military advisor to the Afghan Army, an assignment he finished in November of 2007. In November of 2010, Allen was honored to continue his oath of service to his country when he was elected to the United States Congress, representing Florida's 22nd District. As a member of the 112th Congress, West introduced 7 major pieces of legislation and was the original sponsor of H.R. 1246, which reduces costs in the Department of Defense, and it passed unanimously and was signed into law by President Obama. Congressman West voted for the Balanced Budget Amendment and voted for over 30 different bills designed to empower small businesses, reduce government barriers to job creation, boost American competitiveness, encourage entrepreneurship and growth, and maximize American energy production. He is a Fox News contributor, a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, and regularly writes for numerous media outlets. His first book, Guardian of the Republic, An American Ronin's Journey to Family, Faith, and Freedom, goes on sale April 1st, 2014, so it's out there. He is an avid distance runner, a master scuba diver, and a motorcyclist. And in his spare time, he enjoys cheering his beloved Tennessee Volunteers.
They've been cheering loudly the last few years.
He is a member of the NRA, the VFW, the American Legion, the University of Tennessee Alumni Association, Kansas State University Alumni Association, and the Florida Republican Party. His wife, Angela, holds an MBA and PhD and is a financial planner. His older daughter, Aubrey, attends college in South Florida, and his younger daughter, Austin, is in high school. So we are just really honored to have today with us Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, and we welcome him to the podium.
Well, it really is a pleasure and an honor to be up here, first time ever in Mount Dora. The furthest I have ever been in this part of Central Florida was over in Apopka And I will tell you that this is a beautiful venue, and I'll look forward to bringing the family up here and spending some time. And can y'all please close some of those antique shops if I bring them home? But I'll be done. Okay, she loves antiques. You know, one of the things that the commissioner read about was when I first retired down in South Florida, I taught high school down at Deerfield Beach. And some people would say, well, why would you volunteer to go back over and be a civilian advisor in Afghanistan? Well, I figured if I'm going to be in a combat zone, I might as well. It's a little tough teaching down there in South Florida. But it's really nice to be here today. And the theme that you have, Let Freedom Ring, I think is so important for us where we are in the United States of America, and especially for the children and the grandchildren that we have. Because what I am so concerned about is that we may end up being the first generation of Americans that leave less to our subsequent generations than what was left for each and every one of us. And the thing that it just absolutely amazes me, here I was born in 1961 in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. My father was born in 1920 in South Alabama. He got smart, jumped the Chattahoochee River, and grew up in South Georgia. My mother was born in 1931 down in Fort Valley, Georgia. She grew up down in South Georgia as well. And if you could understand what it was like to be a black person in South Georgia in the 20s and the 30s, think about the fact that their son is now standing here in this venue that was built in 1883. That is how we let freedom ring, by making sure that we pass freedom, we pass on liberty, we pass on opportunities to our subsequent generations. But when we stop talking about that, when we stop sharing all of the greatness of America, the exceptionalism of America, when we don't talk about our foundations, being it the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, then we have people that can come along with poll-tested, marketed messages, bumper sticker slogans, and they can trick an entire nation. You know, when you go back and you look at the Declaration of Independence, that's where freedom was established. Because Thomas Jefferson said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And we fought a civil war to make sure that we upheld that promise. That they are endowed with certain unalienable rights. Those unalienable rights do not come from man. And Jefferson was very specific in putting that in the Declaration because he was establishing something that was different. He was establishing a place where freedom, where liberty, truly did not come from man, because man can take it away as soon as he can give it to you. But he said it comes from your Creator. And of these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is a pursuit of happiness that allows us to have our freedom in the United States of America. It is not a guarantee of happiness. Because when you start talking about a guarantee of happiness, that is something that man can give and take away, not the pursuit. And one of the things that we must come to realize, that there is no freedom, there is no liberty in sitting back and living in Section 8 housing, waiting for the federal government to give you just a little pittance by which you can survive. See, that's a new form of enslavement. That's an economic enslavement. That's an enslavement that takes away that individual's will, takes away their drive, takes away their determination, and eventually it takes away their freedom. Because when I go back to the neighborhood that I was brought up in, where there was once upon a time mothers and fathers with their families and their children, where there were churches that were thriving. I remember Sunday morning, all of us would have to wake up, and after our little morning chores, we'd walk up Kennesaw Avenue, get out there on Boulevard, and we'd go down to our respective churches. Those churches are suffering now because we don't understand what freedom truly means. When people come and tell you that freedom means separation of church and state, and you accept that, that's because you don't understand where freedom comes from. Because Thomas Jefferson wrote in a letter to the Danbury Baptist Convention, the separation of church and state means we will not have an established religion in the United States of America. We will not have a head of state that is also the head of church. But when people can take that simple concept that Jefferson wrote about and all of a sudden make you believe the separation of church and state means separating this country from its Judeo-Christian faith heritage, then you're losing your freedom. And how is that reflected? Just look at the recent decision with the Hobby Lobby case, where all of a sudden a corporation, a business, a family-owned business had to go and defend and fight for their religious freedom. Why? Because a government that believes they're the guarantee of happiness tried to take away the rights that were enshrined in the Constitution based upon what Thomas Jefferson wrote. And in that First Amendment, it says the freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof, not the freedom from religion. So if we are to let freedom reign, we have to first and foremost understand what freedom is. You know, there was a great quote from Abraham Lincoln that he gave at a speech back in 1864. And it was his definition in getting people to understand what liberty truly means. And I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit. But Lincoln said there is this one word called liberty, which many people use, but actually has two different meanings to two different types of people. For one people, liberty means the right and the freedom of an individual to work hard and to be able to live off the fruits of their labor. But to another group, the word liberty means the right that they have to come down and take away the fruits of one's labor for their own means. And Lincoln said, therein you have an incredible juxtaposition. In this one word that means two different things to two different groups of people. But what in truth, what it really comes down to is a difference between liberty and tyranny. If you don't understand your inalienable rights, you will never be able to have true freedom. And if you don't understand where those rights come from, you will not be able to pass that on to those subsequent generations. And see, this is why we have a foundation that is trying to do one simple mission: to have the conversation with all Americans, especially with Americans in minority communities, to really talk about what freedom is. Because if you're not careful, all of a sudden, everything gets turned upside down. I will tell you that the black community was probably a more prosperous and better community before the Great Society programs of Lyndon Baines Johnson than it is today. When you go back and you read the writings of Booker T. Washington, the man that I call the first black conservative, we're not here talking about party, folks. We're here talking about principles. That's the most important thing. And Booker T. Washington at the Southern Exposition, where he gave a speech in Atlanta, Georgia, talked about three fundamental principles that he wanted to see for the Negro: education, entrepreneurship, and self-reliance. Now, if you're not going to tell me that those are conservative principles and values, those are the things that made Booker T. Washington and his message the establishment of Tuskegee Institute and the success of the black community. But you look at the black community today, do you see the education? Do you see the entrepreneurship? Do you see the self-reliance? No, you don't. You see failing schools. And you see a group of people that don't want to have school choice or charter schools in those communities. You don't see the small business development and growth that I saw when I went walking down the street from Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School, past Ebenezer Baptist Church down Auburn Avenue. Auburn Avenue, where I saw doctors' offices and lawyers' offices and small businesses. When I went back to Atlanta in October of last year and I went down Auburn Avenue, I only saw one thing that was open. That was a liquor store. Since the Great Society programs of Lyndon Johnson, the black community now has 72% out of wedlock births. That was not the community that I grew up in. And that's what we need to have the conversation about. And the same with the Hispanic community that believes in self-reliance, believes in entrepreneurship, small business growth, faith, and family. We need to have those conversations. Because those conversations, as the commissioner said in the book that I wrote, faith, family, and freedom. They're all interconnected, and they're all so important. So the challenge we have here today, as we sit here in Mount Dora, is will we step up and understand and talk about what freedom truly means? Freedom does not mean that you sit back and you wait for the government's subsistence. Freedom means that you have an equality of opportunity, which is tied to the pursuit of happiness, as opposed to an equality of outcomes that's tied to a guarantee of happiness. Because when someone is telling you how far that you can go, when someone is telling you what you can truly achieve in life, that's not freedom. That's servitude. That's subservience. And that's not what Thomas Jefferson established this nation to be. That's not what James Madison, John Jay, and Alexander Hamilton or the Constitution enshrining our rule of law for us to be. You know, I can stand here and give you a nice, pretty, feel-good speech, but I can't do that. It's just the same as when I was a battalion commander in Iraq and I stood before 700 troops 2 days before we crossed the border and we went north into Iraq. There were only 2 people in that battalion who had ever served in combat. It was myself and the sergeant major. We had to tell them the truth about what they were going into. And because of that, we didn't lose one soldier in any combat engagement during the time period when I was a commander. We trained them hard, we told them the truth. And so I'm telling you the truth right now. That which is the American dream, the individual sovereignty, our freedom, our liberties, is in danger of being lost.
Right.
And if we are not willing to make the stand and make the fight, the other side is willing to make that fight. But if you are not willing to make that stand and make the fight, you're going to have to look at your children and grandchildren. You're going to have to explain to them why. That which you were able to have, that which you were given, that birthright that you have as an American citizen, you did not feel it was worth your sacrifice to pass it on to them. That's what this comes down to. See, I stand here today because of all the trials, the tribulations, and the sacrifices that my parents and grandparents went through to get me to where I am today. When I look at my 2 daughters, 21 and 17, there is no way that I will not allow them to have the same liberties and freedoms that I have enjoyed, the same opportunities for success that I have had. That's the challenge for me. It's a beautiful day. This is a beautiful venue. But don't you want to make sure that your children and grandchildren can come back here 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, and maybe one of them can stand here at this podium and talk about how my father, my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather sacrificed to make sure that I had all the great freedoms and liberties that this nation can afford. That there was not a sunset on these great United States of America. That the longest running constitutional republic that the world has ever known can continue to be sustained. And they passed on that incredible legacy to me in this day. That's our challenge. And when you think about it, it's a challenge that was laid down, and I shared this earlier. It was a challenge that was laid down about 217 years ago. Because in September of 1787, after the deliberations for the United States Constitution were over, Benjamin Franklin walked out of Independence Hall, and a Philadelphia socialite by the name of Mrs. Powell came up to him. And she said, "Well, doctor, what is it that we have? A republic or a monarchy?" Franklin replied, "You have a republic if you can keep it." The challenge to you today, if you want to let freedom reign, you have a republic, but are you willing to keep that republic where the individual, your freedoms and your liberties reign preeminent? These are indeed the times which will try men's souls, when the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink from their duties. But to those, to the man, to those who will stand, they will deserve the love and admiration of all mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, this country is hurting. This country is looking for principled men and women that will stand and tell them the truth, that will stand and tell them the right solutions to the issues and the problems that they're facing. Being that they can't afford to go to the grocery store and buy the meat, the eggs, and the milk. It's hard to fill up your gasoline tank. People who used to be on full-time equivalent employment are now on part-time. College students that are graduating with immense amount of college debt cannot find a job. They're looking for people that talk about what freedom really is. The challenge is, will we be the ones that tell them that? And I can tell you that no one needs it more than in the minority communities where our inner cities are failing, faltering, and crumbling. We owe it to those who are the least amongst us to make sure that they can be with us and be just as great and exceptional as this country demands. The other thing that I want to close on is we must raise the next generation of American leadership. And when that young man was here in the high school junior ROTC program, I started in 1976 at Grady High School in a junior ROTC program. But when you have people such as a city commissioner up in Brooklyn, New York, or Queens, New York, that wants to destroy and get rid of those high school ROTC programs, that's affecting the next generation of American leaders that will stand patriotic, that will stand understanding our principles, that will stand understanding what it means to be an American leader. Lieutenant Colonel Pagonis, Major Heredia, Master Sergeant Buchanan, Sergeant First Class McMichael were my ROTC instructors from 1976 to 1979 at Henry Grady High School in Atlanta, Georgia. They're the reason why I went on to the University of Tennessee in college ROTC. They're the reason why I graduated from the University of Tennessee with a commission in the United States Army in the Field Artillery, and I served 22 years. They're the people that put me on the path to be an American statesman and leader. We have a great program that our young men and women, especially in our inner city communities, need to see positive role models, not negative role models. So let's join in in making sure that we teach them the right lessons of leadership so they don't gravitate to the negative lessons that you see, which resulted in Chicago over Independence Day weekend, 16 being killed, almost 60 being wounded in gun shootings, or Detroit, or Los Angeles, or Washington, D.C., or Philadelphia, or Atlanta, or even here in Jacksonville, Florida. Our inner cities are crumbling. They're forgetting what freedom means because we're not talking to them about it. I'm giving you a challenge, and I think you'll step up to the plate. Because you know why? Americans have always stepped up to the plate in times of trouble. And these are indeed perilous times. So God bless you all. God bless these great United States of America. And what are your questions? Okay, too often when people come out, they talk at you, they don't talk with you, so I want to hear what's on your mind. And I understand if you ask me a question, you're going to get a straight answer.
How'd you do all that without a teleprompter?
I got a secret new James Bond teleprompter in my class. All right.
2016.
2016 comes 2 years from now.
And then what happens? We need a 2016.
And what happens in 2016? I think I'll be 55. No, look, you know, I will always serve my country, and in whatever capacity that I can. The thing is, in losing a congressional election, it doesn't mean that you stop serving your country. If you truly believe in the oath that you took when you were first sworn in as a young second lieutenant. And that oath is that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and bear true faith and allegiance to the same. There's no statute of limitations on that oath. That oath does not mean that you have to have a title before your name. That oath means that you're an American that believes in the rule of law, you believe in the unifying document, which is our Constitution. You will stand and you will fight for it. So if God so sees me getting back into politics at whatever level, I will do that. But I'll have to wait for him to make that call. Back in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Colonel, what can we do about Common Core? They are going to dumb our kids down so bad.
Okay, the question was, what can we do about Common Core? I think the most important thing is that we need mothers out there that are talking about the most important thing, and that's educating your child. You know, there's a reason why we have local school boards, right? Because education is a local issue. But if we allow a government that is so far removed to believe that they can dictate standards down as to how our children are to be educated, That's not the right way to go. And the other thing that I'm very concerned about with the Common Core is that it is linked to the program called Race to the Top, so that you are not going to get any type of federal funding unless you accept the Common Core standards. Children here in Lake County learn different from children out in Kansas. And the children out in Kansas learn different from the children out in the Pacific Northwest. And the children out in the Pacific Northwest may learn different from the children up in New Hampshire. And if we believe in a cookie-cutter approach to educating our children, I hate to tell you, that's one of the tenets in Karl Marx and Joseph Engels' books called the Communist Manifesto. That's not freedom. So we need to hear your voices, especially the voices of mothers. Mothers are very powerful people. I know. I used to have a Southern mother. Not only was her voice powerful, so was the belt that she had in her hand. And I turned out okay. So we need mothers to stand up and speak about this. You need to write op-ed pieces. You need to get on television. You need to call and talk to your representatives. We need mothers to show up in the state capitol and make sure that they stand on this. Okay? Yes, sir.
Your view on the situation in Iraq regarding ISIS?
My view on the situation in Iraq regarding ISIS, this is a very dangerous group that we're dealing with. I mean, whenever you have a group that is so bad that Al-Qaeda kicks it out, this is very troubling. We left a vacuum in the Middle East, and the vacuum has been filled. In August of 2011, I sat down on a congressional visit with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said, do not zero out your forces in Iraq, because you will create a vacuum. And they're not going to stop there. We have to degrade their capability and their capacity, because right now, as long as they stay entrenched, they're going to get stronger. Now, one thing that I think will work on our side is that they are so, disgusting that they may end up turning a lot of the Sunni tribesmen against them there in Iraq. But I am worried about the fact that they are a rallying cry for a lot of Islamic totalitarians and jihadists, and they will turn and go toward Jordan, and they will eventually threaten Israel. I mean, look at what is happening with Israel right now. Not only are they receiving rockets from Hamas in the south, they're getting it from Hezbollah to the north, and if ISIS makes a move coming in from their east, Jordan will collapse. What is happening in the Middle East right now is a move away from secular Muslim leadership toward the establishment of this borderless caliphate, this Islamic empire. The last time that occurred was with the Ottoman Empire, and people want to bring this back. We've missed a lot of opportunities. We missed an opportunity in Iran with the support of the Green Movement. The fact that we aligned ourselves with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, that was not a good move. We destabilized the situation in Libya. Libya is now overrun with Islamists as well. So there's a very clear-cut enemy out there. And let me explain something to you as well. There are non-state, non-uniform belligerents on the battlefield. When you look and read the Geneva Convention, they are not afforded any rights other than food and shelter. They are not prisoners of war. They are unlawful enemy combatants. We're changing language to appease the enemy. We're giving the enemy constitutional rights when they should not have any rights whatsoever. And we're going to have to deal with this as
a former lieutenant colonel and a current Fox News commentator, you're going to probably ask today sometime on what President Obama just did with the 1,100 troops, giving them a pink slip in Afghanistan on active duty. So you want to comment now on that?
Sure, Councilman. I will tell you that that's a slap in the face. If you can imagine this, you're sitting over in Afghanistan in a combat zone, and your federal government, your commander-in-chief just told you that you're fired, but yet probably the next day you got to go out on a combat patrol. You know, I went through a reduction in force that occurred after Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I'm sure there was a lot of gentlemen here that fought in the Vietnam War that also experienced a reduction in force. There's nothing more demoralizing. And I have friends that are still in, and I've been getting some emails. There's nothing more demoralizing than feeling that your own government has turned their back on you. And turning their back on you at a time when we can't fire people in the IRS. We can't fire people in the VA. We are asking for $3.7 billion to accommodate illegal immigrants, and we're telling captains in a combat zone, you're fired? That's disgusting. That's the only thing I
What is your opinion on the Article 5 Convention of States, which is not the same as the Constitutional Convention? Did you follow that? Because this county has two Florida representatives that have really pushed that.
No, I have signed on supporting that because I think that one of it's in the Constitution, all right? It's something that the founding fathers left to us. If ever we saw a federal government that did not operate within its proper roles and responsibilities, its left and right parameters that were established in the Constitution. So you have a means by which, at the state level, you can bring up amendments that can be voted on at the state level, and of course I think you have to get 3/4, so that equates about 34 to 36 states, and that can become an amendment to the Constitution. Okay? Most of our states, the state of Florida, and I'm sure you have it here at the Lake County Commission, you probably have it here in the city of Mount Dora. They have balanced budget amendments. You're never going to solve the fiscal problem of the United States of America as long as you don't have a balanced budget amendment at the federal government. They will continue to do deficit spending. They will continue to run up our debt. You know, where do you think this $3.7 billion is going to come from? It's going to come from borrowing it from somebody else. So if the people in Washington, D.C. do not want to be fiscally responsible, and this is a constitutional republic, rule of law, and individual sovereignty, 9th and 10th Amendments, then the people at the level of these states have the ability to say, we want this to be an amendment to the Constitution so that the federal government abides by it. Even here in the state of Florida, you have term limits on your state senators and state representatives. These guys, look, Dingle from Michigan has been in Congress almost as long as I've been alive. This is incredible. And it goes back to a quote. Nothing so greatly impels a man to regard the interests of his constituents than the certainty of returning to the general mass of the people from whence he was taken, where he must participate in their burdens. George Mason said that 17 June 1788 at the Virginia Ratifying Convention. Our founding fathers never meant for us to have career politicians. Recess did not mean you go away on a taxpayer-funded vacation. It meant you came back home and you worked as a farmer, a lawyer, a soldier, a doctor, whatever. We now have a career political system. And so I see right there are two great amendments that can come up from the people, up from the states, that help to get this federal government back under control. Balanced budget amendment and term limits. So I support, exactly, this having an Article 5 convention at the state's level. Now, be careful, because the other side, George Soros, is kind of supporting this as well. So you need to study and understand why would they want to support something like that, because anytime you do something, you set a precedent, am I correct? You got to be careful how that precedent will be used later on. Case in point, in 2008, when George Bush signed into law this thing saying that, you know, young girls and kids that have been human trafficking and sexual trafficking cannot be deported back to these Central American countries. Guess what people are using now to justify keeping these illegal immigrants here? So you always got to be careful about what you put in the law and the precedent you establish. Yes, sir.
Colonel West, what can we do here in Lake County to ensure that we get a conservative majority in D.C.?
First of all, I think, you know, I travel the country a lot. And just recently, about 3 weeks ago, I was up at the Reagan Ranch. I spoke to some people at the Reagan Ranch, and I asked them, what does conservatism mean? This is exactly what I got. No one can firmly define what conservatism is. And if you can't define what it is, how can you hold anyone to a standard to go up and be a conservative? It's 5 basic things. It is limited government. That's enshrined in our Constitution. That was started by the Declaration, because the Declaration was about grievances about an invasive and intrusive government. It is then about fiscal responsibility, because if a government is limited in its scope, it's going to be fiscally responsible. It is about individual sovereignty. Your liberties, your rights, your freedoms. That goes back to the Declaration of Independence. It's about a free market economy. We do not have a free market economy now, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be all happy about the Dow Jones tipping over 17,000. You stop printing money, that Dow Jones ain't going to be over 17,000. It's a market manipulated economy because of poor monetary policy. If we had a free market economy, we'd have more small businesses being open and growing. We'd have the right tax and regulatory policies for that. And last and foremost, strong national defense. You look at the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, all of those tasks to the Congress are defense related. That's the number one thing. Provide for the common defense, not provide for welfare, which some people tend to believe. So if we don't understand those 5 principles of conservative thought and idea, but even more so, what is in opposition to conservative thought and principles in America? It's this liberal progressive socialism. Liberal progressive socialism believes in these 4 things. They believe in nationalizing production. Hopefully everyone understands what I'm saying there. Where the government subsumes more of the production of this nation. And you see that. Dodd-Frank, what it's doing in the financial sector, what the EPA is doing with the energy sector, what Obamacare is going to do to the health sector. It is also about creation and expansion of a welfare nanny state. All you got to do is look at how much the poverty and the EBT food stamp nation has grown over the past 5.5 years. It is also about this belief in creating some type of social utopianism, social justice, where everybody's all happy and kind of get along, social egalitarianism. You know, think about what just happened out in California, where they just signed the law where marriage is no longer husband and wife. It's spouse 1 and spouse 2. And then lastly, it's about the creation of a secular state. You got to be very concerned about this drive toward a secular humanism. Why? Because if you remove God from the United States of America, then who is the grantor of your inalienable rights? So first of all, you got to understand your 5 conservative principles. You have to understand their 4 liberal progressive socialist principles, and then you start to have the debate on policy. That's what we have to come to understand first and foremost. And we can get more conservatives up there, because when you talk to people on principle, they are conservative. They are. You go out and say, I want you to be a Republican, people say, I don't know Republican. But if you go down and you talk to the guy who on the weekend brings out this big 55-gallon drum and barbecues out on his front lawn, and you talk to him about small business policies, you talk to him about lessening regulatory intrusion into his life, well, he's all for that. On principle. That's where we got to have the discussion. Yes, sir.
I personally believe that Obama is a Muslim. I believe he has a corrupt administration. And I believe that he is doing everything in his power to bring this country down.
Well, he said so. He said so. Okay. I mean, let me, you just said 3 things. Remember, I'm from Georgia. I went to the University of Tennessee, so 3 is about it for me. So let me start off by saying this first of all. Anyone that stands up and says to you, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming America, he just told you what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And then when he gets inaugurated, he said, we now have to be about the business of remaking America.
Yeah.
He just told you what he's going to do. But if you don't understand those 5 principles, and you don't understand his 4 principles, then you fall for it. Now, the point about him being a Muslim or not, I'm not going to get into that, but this is what I would tell you. The formative years of your life have an incredible impact upon your worldview and your perspective. Okay? My years from 0 to 10, I was learning all the SEC football fight songs. I was going to Atlanta Braves, baseball games, and seeing Hank Aaron, Mike Long, Clete Boyer, Joe Torre, you name it, selling cokes at Grant Field at Georgia Tech. And so that's my perspective. I had a father who served in World War II. I had an older brother who served in Vietnam. I had a mother who served civilian service in the 6th Marine Corps District Headquarters. That formulated a different perspective and opinion. The president has an Eastern orientation, I'll put it that way. When you go back and you look at the speech he gave at the Turkish General Assembly, and also the speech he gave at Cairo, Egypt in 2009, that defined his perspective. Anybody that allows Muslim Brotherhood affiliated individuals to be advisors in his administration, I got a problem with that.
That's right.
Okay? And I will tell you, now that's an impeachable offense, folks. If you have not read the Muslim Brotherhood's explanatory memorandum that was written in 1991, that was found in a FBI raid in 2004, and you can go online, when you leave here, read explanatory memorandum, strategic goal, Muslim Brotherhood in North America. And it tells you exactly what they want to do in this country. Now, we have a former president, Jimmy Carter, that's speaking at a Muslim Brotherhood affiliated group convention. And we have a current president that is allowing them into his administration. I got problems with that. Don't care whether or not he's a Muslim. I care about his orientation and his association. But you're absolutely right. One thing I'll tell you, he has told us exactly what he wants to do. And it's up to us to say, that's not who we are as American people. And that's what we have to, and that's not racist. If you all were racist, why would I be here? Let's be very honest, okay? So it has nothing to do with it. But that is the word that they use to make you self-censored. And you got to stop self-censoring.
That's right.
Was there one other point? Because, you know, I just covered those three because you were tapping me. Good to go? Dessert must have been really good. I didn't get any.
I know.
Yes, ma'am.
How do we go about getting someone to really lead the inner city people that at this point they're so foreign to this country?
Well, that's what we try to do, is get a message out into the inner city to combat the messages of Jesse Jackson Jr. and Al Sharpton, all of them. Because, and I will tell you that you're not going to win 100% of the folks in the inner city. But if you start to get them to question what is happening. I mean, look at Detroit. What happened in Detroit? Okay? Think about what Detroit used to be and what Detroit is today. And who were the ones in charge of Detroit that brought it to that point? Who were the ones in charge of Chicago? Who were the ones in charge of all the inner cities? But see, we don't make that point. And this is the problem that I have, is that we believe in this thing called outreach. And what outreach means is that in Black History Month, we show up on one certain day. We have fried chicken, collard greens, and macaroni and cheese and cornbread, and maybe some sweet tea. And then people never see us again until maybe 2 months before the election. Or if it's this, Hispanic American Month, we show up on, whatever, celebratory day. We put on a big sombrero, whatever, eat some refried beans, and no one ever sees us again. What we need to have is constant contact in these communities and talk to them about the issues that turn things around. How many people know what Barack Obama did in April 2009? One of the first things he did, April 2009. This is monumental. He canceled the D.C. school voucher program. We should have just jumped on that like I don't know what. Because where does his children go to school? Sidwell Friends. So what the President of the United States of America, the first Black President of the United States of America, said, your kids aren't good enough. What did Eric Holder do to the state of Louisiana? The first Black Attorney General. He sued the state over their school choice program. What is Mayor Bill de Blasio, what did he seek to do in New York City, in Harlem? Go after the charter school. So if we, and guess who are the people that went to Albany, New York to complain to Governor Cuomo? Single Black moms. Single Black moms who want a better opportunity for their children. Single Black moms, for them, pro-choice means the ability for me to be able to educate my child, just not kill my child. And we never said anything about that. We never wrapped our arms around that whatsoever.
And who's we? When you say we?
All of us. All of us have got to do this.
We've got to find some we that will stand up and say we've got to get the back for the inner cities.
And it starts with each and every one of us. It really does. It has to be a personal choice that you make. Because let me tell you how it ends up in math. Mitt Romney won 73% of the counties in the United States of America in 2012. 73% of the counties in America in 2012. And I don't think he got 140 electoral votes. President Obama won 27% of counties and got over 313 electoral votes. That was a smackdown. Now where is the center for all of those counties? Minority urban centers. Minority urban centers that are failing. minority urban centers that are failing under liberal progressive socialist policies. And if we don't go in and engage, okay, it's not going to happen. So when you say we and who's the leader, in 2012 we had a presidential candidate that didn't do it. And guess what? They defined him, didn't they? And they demonized him. All he had to do, let me tell you the best commercial that Mitt Romney could have run. Mitt Romney could have been standing in Detroit in one of those dilapidated, rundown neighborhoods and could have had a juxtaposition of Detroit, Michigan when his father was governor. And said, this was Michigan, this was Detroit when my dad was governor. This is Detroit, this is Michigan today. Which one do you want? I want to restore it back to what my father had. Wow. Game over. But we don't do that. So the we has to be something not just from a leader, but all of us have to embrace that. Yes, sir.
What's Debbie Wassner's Australia
Okay. I will break my own rule. I will not give you a straight answer on that one. She's a charming person. Quite delusional, too.
I want you to tell us more about your foundation and
Sure.
whether this could be the vehicle that we could help you reach into inner city.
I believe it can be a vehicle. When you talk about who and how do we do it, it is about educating people. It is about getting that message in there. It is about developing the next generation of leadership in the minority communities, conservative type of leadership that turns this thing around. And the only way we do it is to use non-standard, tactics and processes, because what we have been doing is not working. We have to develop the emotional connection. We have to develop the contact. And this is the only time I will say the word Republican here. Most people don't know that the first members of the United States House and Senate that were black were Republicans. Now I'm going to ask you guys a trivia question. I'm going to see if y'all know it. Before me, who was the last black Republican to be on Capitol Hill? From this state, I'm sorry, from this state.
Nobody. You were the first.
Josiah T. Walls, a former slave, was the first black member of Congress from the state of Florida, and he was served from 1873 to 1876. Why did it take from 1876 to 2010 for this state to produce a black Republican member of Congress? We got to change that. We got, again, with the we got to know our own history. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, civil rights legislation. Okay, who was the person that federalized the National Guard to enforce Brown versus the Board of Education?
Eisenhower.
Who was the senator that ensured that the civil rights legislation in 1964 passed? It weren't Robert Byrd. It weren't Al Gore Sr. It was Everett Dirksen. So yes, what we are trying to do is educate people on that history, educate people on that connection, and talk to them about opportunities and how they can have policies that promote them to have better opportunities for their children and grandchildren. Yes, sir.
Colonel West, thank you for coming to Lake County.
Thanks for having me.
I'd love to hear your views on the southern border crisis currently going on, as well as the overall immigration problem.
The thing with the immigration situation was in 1986, we tried the amnesty thing under Ronald Reagan. Federal government never owned up to its responsibilities of securing the border first. In Article 1, Section 8, Article 1, Section 10, and Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, it talks about, as the Founding Fathers said, repel invasions. That means securing your borders. There are people that believe that we should be a borderless nation. They don't believe in our sovereignty. These individuals have come here illegally, and as a matter of fact, you don't even hear people say illegal immigrant anymore. Undocumented workers, they're calling them refugees. They're not even calling them crisis. Valerie Jarrett has said it's a humanitarian situation. So first and foremost, we cannot allow the other side to change the language, change the lexicon. Okay, we have got to say very simply, the United States of America is not here as a dumping ground. Okay, you're not going to destabilize this country. You're not going to destabilize our economy, our national security, our health care, our education system. There was an incredible black woman out of Houston, Texas. And I'm sure y'all saw the video where she stood up and said, enough's enough. Okay? And that's what I'm saying. We can make this connection. Because she's concerned about what? She said, what about the kids here? Okay? So why don't we get in there and talk about that and making sure that doesn't happen? This is not a good thing. And you know, we already know that releasing these individuals out into the public, they don't come back for hearings. And we don't need to throw more money in there to get judges. And these judges will be provided by groups like LULAC and La Raza and some of these other radical Hispanic lobby groups. So this is very dangerous. This is about eroding the sovereignty of the United States. That's what this comes to. Yes, ma'am.
How much longer will we have to wait for our soldier from Mexico that's imprisoned in Mexico? How many more children will we have to bring into this country to make it even, so everybody is evened out and we have this young man back home?
There is only one person that can answer that question. That person sits at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm very honest.
Well, where is he? Because he doesn't seem to be home very often.
Well, he was drinking beer, shooting pool. He jumped line at a barbecue place in Austin. From what I hear, he's supposed to go on vacation to Martha's Vineyard. I mean, it's easy to follow him. Just track Air Force One. You got it. Yes, ma'am. Beautiful singing voice.
Thank you. What are we going to do in this country to take care of our veterans and their health care so they're not dying in lines waiting to get care? That
Well,
they bled and died to
absolutely.
keep us free.
First of all, you have to understand that the Veterans Administration has become an overarching bureaucracy. Yes. One of the main reasons I keep myself healthy is so that I don't have to go to the Veterans Administration Hospital, even though we have a good one down in West Palm Beach. We need to be, $156 billion is the budget for the Veterans Administration. That should be going first and foremost to one thing, that's health care of veterans. Yes. That means that we need to develop VA centers of excellence, where we have a VA hospital that is combined with a local private sector community hospital so that those veterans can get their care. They don't need to sit around and wait for someone on a list. They need to be, you know, ferried out to wherever. We need to make sure that veterans that are, you know, outside of a radius, let's say, of 100 miles from a VA hospital or a VA outpatient clinic, they're able to go to a private sector hospital. They should not have to sit and say, I got to drive 100, 150 miles or wherever, and then be told you have to go on a wait list. It is absolutely appalling what we're doing. But that shows that the priorities of our government is upside down. Again, $3.7 billion to go and want to take care of illegal immigrants when you have our veterans dying. You're giving out pink slips to our young men and women who will end up being veterans, but yet you're not firing anybody in the Veterans Administration. Right. This is a union bureaucracy, and it has to be broken.
Yes.
Right to your left.
Yes, ma'am.
This has been the most incredible afternoon.
Well, no, I would say if Tennessee can beat Florida in football, that would be the most incredible.
Don't hold your breath.
I will come back up here and jump in that lake. In my big orange skivvies.
Go Balls. The Republican Party still does not have a charismatic leader to run for the next presidential election. Would you consider running?
Women always know how to put a guy. Look, you know, it is one thing to have a following. When you talk about an endeavor such as that, you got to have a machine behind you. And you have to have a machine because, you know, everyone's going to come after you. Because you will be deemed a threat if you're not within their own little cabal. And there's a collusion between both sides. Oh, yeah. Okay, I've got to be honest with you. So I have to pray about that. I have to make sure that it is what God would have me to do. And if so, you know, I will make that call based upon what He says. But you got to understand, as we were discussing up here, there are two parts to a campaign or election, whatever. It's an image and it's a message phase. And the problem on our side is that we never win the image phase. We have a superior message, but the very visual electorate that we have, they never get to the message phase. Jimmy Carter was the kind little Southern peanut farmer. You can do all that, but he won because people had empathy for him. Bill Clinton was on Arsenio Hall with the saxophone in the dark shade, jumping around, going on MTV, and he won. And then we had someone that came along, Hope and Change, and he was cool, playing on Twitter, and he won. So we have to understand the rules of the road. We have to understand that we have to win that image battle first because our message is superior. We have to have someone that can show that they can make an emotional connection with all Americans. There's going to be a segment of this population you're not going to get through. That's fine, I got it. But I guarantee you 60 to 65% of this country is looking for principled leadership that puts America first. And that's what we have to present. Ronald Reagan, when he ran against Jimmy Carter, made a clear delineation, made a clear separation between his principles and Carter's principles. 49-1. That's like Steve Spurrier football, okay? You just run up the score. I mean, 49 states to 1 state. So when you present the American people with a clear choice that is principle-based, when you present the American people with an image of leadership, they will accept it. They will choose that. All right, 2 more questions. Young lady, running for state rep. Tell everybody.
As a whole, most simply put, how would you define the role of government?
The role of government is very simple. The role of government is to set the conditions through the right type of policies for the success of the individual. That's it. The role of government is, as John Locke said, as he wrote in his second treatise, was to protect life, liberty, and property. Of course, Thomas Jefferson changed that to the pursuit of happiness, which means your equality of opportunity to be able to succeed. The role of government is that some Americans are going to slip off the ladder of success or achievement, but there should be a safety net that is there to enable them to climb back up on that ladder. The safety net should not be a hammock. That's a very different concept. That's the role of government. All right, last question.
Midterm elections. I believe there's 6 seats that we need to gain in the Senate. What do you feel those 6 states are, and what has to be done in order for us to...
North Carolina. No, I got to make sure I get North Carolina, Alaska, Arkansas, I think it's New Hampshire, Louisiana. What's the other one? Okay, it's North Carolina, Kay Hagan, Alaska, Mark Begich, Mark Pryor in Arkansas, Gene Shaheen in New Hampshire, Mary Landrieu in Louisiana. No, you're not going to do that. And then there are some others where you can have some pickups. It's Colorado with Mark Udall. And you can tell when someone's in trouble when they don't want to be with the president at a fundraiser for himself. Okay? So there is that good possibility. There's even some glimmers of hope in like Minnesota. So it can be done. But the most important thing is, I think, for us to be able to win back the Senate, is you have to win and run against Harry Reid and what Harry Reid has done. And you have to say that every person that is going there for Harry Reid is a vote for that guy. And you think about what Harry Reid did that fundamentally, you talk about fundamentally transforming America, fundamentally changed how business is done in the United States Senate by getting rid of the filibuster rule. Everything's now just a simple majority under Harry Reid. And that's something that he unilaterally declared. So that's a major reason why he should not be there. And he is nothing but an obstacle. He is the interference. So many Americans, what's amazing to me, they think that there's only one party in Congress. They don't understand that, who's, in control of the Senate. That comes back to a foundation that educates people on the basic structure of our government. We don't teach civics like we used to. And people don't understand. People don't, remember that Schoolhouse Rock, well, I hope and pray that I was. But today I was there, just a bit. Remember that? I mean, we grew up understanding how legislation was done. I bet you. Most of our kids now, they don't understand how legislation is brought forth, proposed, voted on, sent over to the Senate. They don't understand what it takes to, you know, the different types of vetoes and how to override a veto. But it is possible to win back the Senate. It has to be done. You know, the president had his first 2 years with House and Senate that were his own. If he wanted to do something on immigration reform, he could have done it.
Yes.
He could have, whatever he wanted. He chose to focus on health care. He chose to focus on Dodd-Frank. And look at how that's, you know, ending up. So we have got to go on offense, and we have got to start getting them to defend themselves and their failing. You know, the Hobby Lobby case, I mean, look at some of the things, the lies and distortions that are coming out about the Hobby Lobby case. You know, we need to have a messaging machine that can combat that. Because all this is trying to go out and tell young female voter segment that all of a sudden the Supreme Court of the United States of America got rid of all contraception. It's so far from the truth, it's amazing. So there is a possibility to win it, and there's no doubt. We have to protect the seats that are up there, you know, the Republicans own. There's up north in Georgia, there's a critical race that's going to happen there. Sam Nunn's daughter, Michelle Nunn, is running. We got to make sure that she doesn't win that seat, because she's nothing like Sam Nunn. So I think they can do it. All right, folks, I just want to tell you again, it is always a pleasure and an honor when people invite this simple little guy who was born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, to come speak before them. And if there's anything that you leave out of here knowing today, I am the embodiment of what freedom is and what liberty is. To have been born to parents that had to suffer and endure, you know, a father that went to fight for this nation when truly this nation didn't afford him all the rights and liberties and freedoms he should have. He never said a harsh word about America. He taught me this is the greatest nation that the world has ever known. He taught me that it would be an honor to serve in uniform for this nation. There's no greater honor than that. That's what enables us to be free, because we pass that on from generation to generation to generation. And from generation on, we have lived up to the challenge that Benjamin Franklin gave us 217 years ago. The challenge is to continue that and accept that challenge and preserve this great constitutional republic for our future generations. Let freedom ring, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. God bless you. Ain't no telephones on Rocky Top, ain't no telephone bills. On Rocky Top, you'll always be home sweet home to me. Good old Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Housekeeping remarks that I want. Vance has been videotaping everything today, and we would love it if you would take that and share that, what Congressman West has shared with us today, with everybody that you know. It's so critically important. It's going to be on fiscalrangers.com. If you don't know Vance's website, it will be there. So please share to everybody who wasn't here today.
Can you repeat that? Fiscal Rangers?
Fiscal, F-I-S-C-A-L, Rangers.com.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It'll be there tomorrow. Also, I'd like to thank some of our elected officials who are with us today. Representative Larry Metz came in. Also, school board members Todd Howard and Bill Mathias.
Todd Howard!
Both of them are here. Of course, Leslie Campione, our county commissioner. And Nick Jerome, who is running for the Mount Dora City Council. And we appreciate all that you do. And thank you for joining us. Please share the video. Share it with your friends and neighbors, and make certain that we start turning the tide for this beacon that's shining on the hill.